Senegal is hosting this meeting, so Senegal.
Merci.
Thank you, dear facilitator, for giving us the floor. I will start by saying that the facilitators were inspired to talk about giving and getting in this room that is named after the poet President Leopold Sedar Senghor. He extensively talked about giving and receiving in his books and writings. For Senegal, we have for gives and gets many points, namely giving our time, our expertise, our energy, our network, and all our resources uh, at the disposal of the network. Because during the representation, we had the baobab with its fruits, its leaves, etc. And we also want to establish a peaceful and friendly atmosphere that would enable all members of the network to achieve our shared goals. For the gets, we want to draw from the existing expertise of the stakeholders. We also believe that we will get a lot from the network in as far as financial resources and logistics are concerned. We also get the necessary tools for personal and professional development in pooling our efforts. So this is in a nutshell what we discuss as far as Senegal is concerned. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, Jonas, I'm going to make a couple wrap-up comments, and then we can go to the next slide. So we heard some great things come out there, and I remember hearing about willingness to share data, for example, which is one of the things that can be a challenge. And a lot of the stuff that you shared really exposes what it means to be in a trusting relationship, because we do need to have those things that we need to receive, as well as what we can give for things to work. And that includes those who are providing resources and funding for our initiative in building the network. And it requires us to be totally honest with all parties, whether they be inside the network or providing resources for the network, that we can be very clear about what we need to have and in turn what we can give to make that successful. So we hope that you now feel comfortable in using this exercise with your networks when you build them as well, because it gives us the ability to be honest with each other. If we can go to the next slide. So we're going to quickly go through these, and then Jane will help wrap us up. And of course, all of this will be in the manual or guidebook that we are going to provide you. But I think you've already stated it very well today. Trust is key. We need strong relationships. We need to also be comfortable with the fact that our network is going to evolve and emerge as we get into it. And for that reason, we need to be fluid and allow folks to be willing to come and go if necessary, but also to make sure that our design is not so rigid that we cannot adapt if we need to. We need to make sure that we do not discourage individual initiative or self-interest, because it will always be there. Sometimes we think that self-interest is bad, and it's probably going to harm our networks. The important thing is to acknowledge that everyone who brings something to the table has to have some kind of reward or incentive. The next slide, please. We want to make sure that organizations find ways to become more deeply engaged, and that we openly encourage that. we have to make sure that we make decisions. When we come together to talk about what's next, close those conversations at the end with a decision and make sure that with everyone acknowledging that. And we want to make sure we think about who else should be involved. Are there other parties and organizations and out there that we included? And then we need having the hard conversation. Other to have the difficult conversations rather than skimming over or forgetting about them, because they continue to emerge as we move on. So thank you very much. And Jane, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. Next slide, please. So I just want to take a few minutes to wrap up and share a few more closing thoughts since we're just about out of time. But I have to say I was really inspired and encouraged to hear about the great lessons that you've taken away from these very brief exercises that we did. And again, want to encourage you to think about how you might be able to use them. And we'll again share the how-to in the guidebook that we'll prepare. But you see that we spent, for the sharing stories exercise, it was half an hour, 40 minutes, or half an hour for each of you to share. But what a difference it makes in the dynamics because you took that time to deliberately invest in the relationship building. And likewise with the gives and gets, instead of getting directly to a particular project or problem that you needed to solve, really more about focusing on, well, what is it that you need out of the relationship or what you seek to get? And at the same time, what you're willing and eager to offer to help the network succeed. Is that openness and that transparency and willingness to speak about things more freely makes a big difference in the ability of the network to, again, build that relational foundation that is what is at the core of all successful collaborations. Next slide, please. So again, we just want to close with these very simple principles in some ways, but at the same time, we know they're complex because it's difficult to navigate in an ecosystem, in an environment that doesn't necessarily value or reward all of the the network principles in bold. So there's need for a culture change and behavior change and mindset shift for all players involved, whether it's the international funders and the approach and the incentives and rewards they put in place, to the networks at the ministry level, to the networks throughout the communities that you're working in and working directly with beneficiaries and really being customer and service driven. So all of those things need to work productively in a network. So these conversations that we engaged in very briefly today are ones that you can have with all of these various stakeholders to help, again, strengthen those relational ties so that you can get the network work done. But investing in those relationships is always worth the time and effort. So I'm just going to turn it to Marty and Annalie if they have any last words, and then we'll close out our session. Thanks. Marty or Annalie, did you have any last comments that you wanted to make? Closing comments? So it sounds like maybe our connection isn't working. So if we could turn to the next slide, and I'll just wrap with a few resources that might be helpful to you all going forward. My colleagues and I have written many articles that are useful for sharing these ideas and getting the 4 principles across to potential partners and your board members or your funders. So those resources are all at this website, newnetworkleader.org. And Marty and I are happy to answer further questions, or if you want to connect offline, please feel free to reach out to us. Any other last comments from my colleagues? And then I really just want to thank you all for the opportunity. It's really been a privilege to be here with you all today. And I really wish you all the best in your network building journeys. Thank you so much.
My connection was getting bad, but I want to say the same thing. This has been an honor and a privilege for us, and we wish you all the best success.
Annalie, did you have any closing words, remarks?
Yes, I'll give the floor to Olivier.
Okay, thank you, James, and thank you all the colleagues, all your network that was with us. It was a good. I was just taking note when you were speaking, so there were a lot of things, and also our discussion we used to have concerning the network. There are some lessons that you provide to me yesterday that I am taking into account also. So let us keep in touch. You know that we are waiting for you a good guideline, and they are waiting also the guideline. So hope to continue our discussion just after this meeting. Perhaps next week we will have another chat to discuss about how to take in about the information we collected during this training, and I am certain that we will go far and we will do a good work in this initiative. Thank you very much, and see you very soon. I hope in Dakar for the team. Ciao. Okay.
Thank you.
Dear participants, it was a pleasure, it is a pleasure to take the floor. We are getting to the close of this workshop. We have now started the closing session of this workshop. We have been together for 3 days, 3 intensive days, and we thank you for your attendance. We thank you all for your involvement, for your commitment to the various activities. We thank the trainers, Guillaume Priso, those who were online, Jane and her team. We also want to thank the technicians who were with us to ensure that we were connected and could exchange online with these trainers. the technicians who were working on the audiovisual side. Thank you to the interpreters as well, who ensure that the francophones and the anglophones. We thank UNESCO colleagues who came from various areas to ensure that everything went well. We thank the partners also. For the closing ceremony, we will hear from, we have a few remarks from the representative of the participants. Then we will hear from the head of the secretariat of the initiative, and then we will hear from the partners. We have IIEP, and we hope that IFEF will come later. And at the end, we will have the closing remarks of the representative of the UNESCO Bureau in Dakar. So that is the proceedings for this closing ceremony. I will now give the floor to Mrs. Kima, who will say a few words on behalf of the participants. Madam Kima, you have the floor. 2-3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you. On behalf of the participants of this workshop, we would like to thank the members of UNESCO, partners of UNESCO. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to take the floor at this closing ceremony of our workshop, our training workshop on digital transformation of TVET systems, to thank UNESCO for having put the necessary measures in place to ensure that this training session takes place. We thank you very much. At the end of these 3 days of training, we have learned a lot. I can say on behalf of all of the participants that we are well equipped with regard to these 3 themes that were discussed: how to become a trainer of trainers, how to create and manage a network, and how to a technical network and a national network. We have learned a lot, and we are fully satisfied after this 3-day training. Beyond the experiences and the knowledge gained from this training, we would like to thank UNESCO for the excellent working conditions. We were well fed and well accommodated, and we would like to thank you for that also. I would just like to add that we have gained a lot from this training session. We are even more committed, so we would like to reassure UNESCO that when we go back to our respective countries, we will continue to advocate advocacy work that we had begun before at the start of this initiative. So we will continue this advocacy work so as to put in place, to establish these networks. We call on you to provide us support so that we can reach our objectives, to share our experiences, our resources, so that we will be able to effectively establish national and sub-regional networks. Once again, thank you to all of you, and see you soon. Thank you.
Donc,
Maybe just say that all the materials that were used, like Guillaume said, we will share all these resources with you. So rest assured that you will receive them. For yesterday's materials, I think most of them were in English. Is it possible to have them in French? We have taken note of your request. We will talk with the Secretariat so that we can have the resources in both languages. If the head of the Secretariat is ready, maybe he can take the floor. Unless he wants us to give the floor to the partners. So, yes, we will now give the floor to Jérôme, just to say a few words. He will be talking on behalf of IIEP. I'll be talking on my own behalf, first of all, because I was not able to follow the whole training, so I have to be careful what I say. But what I had this morning, I found very interesting and relevant. And in terms of IEP's perspective, specialized institution of UNESCO in terms of methodology and expertise and steering of policies and strategies. From our perspective, what is important is to see how, after having identified a certain number of key issues with regard to digitalization, how we can move to the next stage. Initiate, innovate, launching concrete initiatives. There are findings that are recurring because they are true. Now, probably what is at stake, in my opinion, is one of the missions of this leadership training is to move on to concrete action. These are things that can be shared. We talked about the networking aspects that can, from which we can draw a certain number of lessons. From our perspective, we participate in collaboration with the regional bureau in this Pan-African initiative, and we will continue to assess, we'll continue this collaboration in order to provide, give our input to help to provide our support. I will just stop here because I only attended today's workshop, and really congratulations to you all. Thank you. I was expecting you to introduce yourself because maybe some people do not know you. I am Jérôme Gérard, Senegalese of Toubab ethnicity. I am at IIEP UNESCO Dakar here for the past 6 years. I have been here for the past 6 years, and I work in terms of professional training platform, which supports educational training policies in Africa. And I work specifically on issues relating to networking, collaborative dynamics, capitalization, learning by peers. Thank you. Thank you, Jérôme. We were supposed to have ECOWAS here. I don't know whether it has been confirmed.
Pas de problème. Donc, on donne quelques instants.
So we'll give the head of the secretariat a few minutes to prepare his remarks.
Ma clé, c'est après. Tu ne vas pas? Enlève sur le main. Youssouf, s'il te plaît, tu vas nous aider? Le nom, c'est quoi? Okay. Oui. Donc, le chef sécurité.
The head of the secretariat will talk about the various activities that were conducted during this training, and especially we'll talk about the next steps.
Donc, sur ce, donc, je lui donne.
I give you the floor.
Bon. Bonjour à tous.
Good afternoon, everybody. We had planned that partners were supposed to speak, but when they all had their schedules at the session ourselves. So in order to move, to go faster, I did not have enough time to prepare the outcomes, but I thought maybe I just needed to remind of the objectives. The last time I made a presentation talking in a global manner, talking about Africa, if there's a first thing that we need to take from this place with regard to a country vision, we are called upon to help our countries to put in place an ecosystem that will be conducive to the digital transformation of our TVET systems. The initial document talks about Africa, but here we specified that it has to be by country, because we're saying what are we going to do for our countries in this regard. So that is what I adapted here. Here I have what every country should ensure that they do to have that ecosystem. In 2020, we realized that countries that were moving towards digital transformation, like Korea, there's a minimum set of objectives that they achieved, and that is the minimum that we want you to achieve in your countries as well. So we said there should be a network that is working, etc. And I want you to take this away from when you live here and you become the guarantors of these objectives. Here, what I wanted to show, yesterday I had a discussion with those who were presenting on national networks, and she said that she understood from your questions that the national network was supposed to be created here, but it has to be created from here, not right now. Yesterday I told her that we had this impression, that we had this understanding that this, following your questions, you thought that a network is created by a decree, and that is not the case. The network is built as time goes on. So to know that when you get back home, that's when you start building on your network. It's a 2-3 year process to build this network. We talked about vision, mission, trust, all of that, because you're working together. And you have to formalize this into a network. So that is why she suggested that we look at all of this and put this and bear this in mind. So I think that this graphic will help you to better understand our expectations. Because I think the previous chart did not clarify the expectations. Today we're at this stage. For us, you are already a part of the technical secretariat. You are part of this technical team. Later on, what we will be doing in December, we will take 2 or 3 people again, and we will have at that time 6 people that we will consider as the technical team that will be work to build that national network. Those 6 will not be the national network, they will be the ones to build that network. So that was one of the clarifications I had with her yesterday. In all work that we do with the states, we do not work with individuals. We work with state entities, the ministries, meaning that even if we are working with individuals, it is under the authority of a ministry. We often say that people can be changed, but this initiative it's institutional. There has to be a continuity. Therefore, I would like to specify, based on your questions, I thought that this was implicit, but I have to say this. So all the work we do has to be led by a department of a ministry in charge of vocational training. Even if you are the technical team, this technical team is under the supervision or coordination of a department of a ministry in charge of vocational training. This is something that came up from our discussions. Countries have different setups. We as UNESCO, as a partner, we cannot say that it is this department or that department who should lead this technical team. It is the ministry in charge of vocational training who will appoint this team and say under what department this team will be housed. And I think it is the same thing in Anglophone and English-speaking countries. All of the work will be done under the authority of a ministry. Now, when we talk about a department, it is the department who coordinates. When we talk about digital transformation, yesterday with Eric, we saw that it's an entire ecosystem. There are so many stakeholders. You are the technical team, but the work will be done in collaboration with the various stakeholders. That is something I wanted to clearly specify so that it is clear in all of our minds. This was all part of the discussions we had with the experts, and yesterday they made us understand that maybe we have to make sure that you have the same understanding as we have. So do you understand that it is clear, this chart is clear and you know what is your role? Because before we go home today, we have to be clear that you understand your role.
Yeah, Doc, it's clear, but we would suggest the secretariat, the international secretariat in Dhaka comes with modalities. As when we go back, you see that our ministries in our part of the world are quite bureaucratic, and if it's not clear-cut, it's going to be difficult. Now, for instance, a secretariat might have at least an office space, or at worst, a desk. Now, that desk must be located in a particular room, so that other network members, if they want to do some work or find out something, can come there. Now, if you have the team which are scattered here and there, there's no even space. They come where even some to even sit down before you even transact official business, network business with them will be a challenge. So if our ministries of education, our ministers, deputy ministers in charge of TVET, as in some countries, our chief directors at the ministries are notified and guided that it is incumbent upon them to provide these facilities. If not, the network will be hanging. Mm-hmm. Two, for now, like some of us who are doing the work of the focal points, deputy focal points, we're using our own resources to do it. You have to be communicating, use your own unit, internet connectivity, all those things. If these things are not clearly spelled out, we'll continue doing it, and it can retard the progress of activities. So we would like you to guide us and them so that things move on well. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. There are two aspects that you propose. The first is about structure, about setup. We are talking about a national network. In the mid and long term, it is not a ministerial affair automatically. You have to understand it is being built. It is people who come together with a shared vision, with a shared mission. It is not a permanent position. It is people working who have their daily works, but they share the same vision and decide to change to exchange information in order to implement a certain number of activities, advocacy, technical support. So you have to understand that the national network is not an institution, a state institution. That is why we need to prepare. With time, you will identify the people that you need, what is expected of them, what they will bring to the table. So for us, she was right to say that there are many networks. There are many networks, different networks but our network is supposed to become to work independently, and you can be a member of a network, and the network, the idea is not to create a new function within the ministry, but it's a grouping of individuals, the actors, and you will with time define the profile of the key stakeholders to promote digital transformation. It is your role today to create. You may even create the network and not be a member of the network. The idea is to create this network which will promote digital transformation. In some cases, they talk about coalitions, so that is, they come up with advocacy actions, push the state to adopt certain measures, etc. So with time, you will find out how to get there. So it is a short and medium term affair. Well, that's what we're doing here. The second thing is that in terms of materials to place to work, resources, early on we are talking about political commitment. In this initiative, the country is not working for the secretariat. The country is working for itself. We are pushing the country to improve digital transformation, accelerate digital transformation. Yesterday we talked about political commitment. We went to Mali for a mission, and I don't know whether Representative Mali is here. We were talking. The minister said he wanted a digital transformation strategy by next year. It is the minister who said, I want this digital transformation strategy by next year. For us, that is a political commitment. We will work with Mali in order to do that, because it is a political commitment. And when the minister says this, we will give guidelines to the ministry on how to do this. We will come with support, but the minister also will put in place, will get his staff to work with us. So it's something that should come from the ministry, and that is why we talk about commitment. The Gambian colleague said that her minister wants us to go and do the same there. So it's a give and take matter. It is not the partner who says, I will come, you do this, do that. No, for us, we want to accompany countries that are convinced that they need to move towards digital transformation. And when they are convinced that they need to do this, we will provide them with guidelines on how to do this. We provide them with technical support for several years, but it is not us who will tell the country, put in place staff, have staff, give them resources. It is the country that has to do that. We cannot impose that on the ministry, tell them how to organize their staff. The ministry, if they're committed, will put the resources in place. We come to accompany, to support the country. So if it's a vision of the ministry, you will explain to the minister what the implications are, and we will help you facilitate this. So these are two areas I just wanted to specify. Yesterday I talked about taking 5, 6, 7 countries initially, and then just selecting 4 when that country says, this is my vision and this is where I want to go there, and then we support those 4 countries. For us, we are at this stage here. Today, we suppose that by December, when we are going to train the second cohort, by December, we will potentially have 7 national teams. But we will continue during year 2, because this training gives you the competencies and vision and everything. But in year 2, we will provide support to 4 national teams. But the request has to come from the ministry. All of this is just a strategy. When we say the situational analysis is just to know where we are right now, and we have to know where we want to go. And when we say an action plan, it's how we get there. So this is just a strategy.
So when the minister will send his request and notify to us that he wants to be part of this, he wants capacity building, and we see that he is relevant, he really wants that, we will start putting forth the strategy for digital transformation. So if the minister wants the initiative to tag along and support them, we will impose on the ministry to work with the national team for which we had built capacity. So our role here is going to support the ministry, but making sure that the ministry works in collaboration with the national team that we would have built the capacity for, because they have the tools and we will set the rules on how they will work together. I don't know if the approach is clear to you. The lady is not very much convinced.
Olivia, but I want to agree with my Ghanaian colleague that I think we need further guides and further support, not in terms of finance, but in my view, the best way to the best way to get this done is to institutionalize it. Because, for example, ministers can change. For example, for me, I have support from my current minister because he was part of the launching. And I remember even to get here, to get government clearance to travel out of the country as a civil servant was a bit of difficult. But my minister has to give clear directive from where he was to say that they should clear me out to be able to travel here. So I want to really believe that once it is institutionalized, we will be able to coordinate, because as a government or as a group, it's like he said, if you even want to, you cannot just go and then form the network, even though you may not even be part of. But even that coordination bit will require some support from your current dispensation, because you would need some bit of time out of your work schedules, or maybe even when we institutionalize, it can even form part of the government budget in the beginning, because we are talking about ownership. In the long run, if UNESCO would go out and then we really want to continue, we need the support, collaboration from other ministries that have stake in TVET and even other private partners. But in the initial arrangement, I think we need that kind of maybe TOR or kind of other technical support to enable us, establish this. I think
I think that we are saying the same thing really. What I am saying that is the reason why I said that at the beginning, when we receive the request, we need to know what is the, for example, in your country, for example, you are the one in charge of the TVET section. So the minister in the request must precisely what is the direction, who is the, not the person, the direction in charge of to coordinate, because as you say, when you give a direction, it means that it do not depend on individual. It means that even if the individual go, the direction will be the one, the entry point for all what we are doing. So when we will receive the request from the country, the first thing we will request to the minister is to say what is the direction of the ministry in charge to lead the initiative at the country level, not the individual. This is for us the first way that prove that institutionalized. That means that it do not depend on individual, but it depends on the direction. As UNESCO, when we will reply, we let the minister know that yes, we notice that this is the direction in charge. We have already trained this team. We suggest to work. This team is the technical team that must work in synergy with the direction, because minister can decide to say that it is this. The minister have the right to say the digital transformation can be led by this or this direction. But what we would like to ensure is that those who has been trained by us, who have the vision of the initiatives, must be the technical person that will work with the direction. So this is the two things that I want to be clear. Donc ce que je veux dire c'est que il y a une équipe technique.
What I wanted to say is that there is a technical team that will be trained. By the end of this year, we will have that technical team up and running. And the way of institutionalizing things is that saying which department or division of the ministry will be leading the initiative at the level of the ministry. And this division has to work in collaboration with the technical team. So when we receive the request from the ministry, that will be our answer to the minister or the ministry. So we commit to pursue this collaboration, but we need, prior to that, a request from the ministry that shows their commitment and support in devising a strategy for digital transformation. Is it clear? That is what we want from your ministries. Once we receive a request from the ministry to seek our support to establish or develop a strategy document for digital transformation, that's what we call in our jargon political engagement or commitment. And once we know the name of the department or division in charge, because we have some partners that have already budgeted for the support of some countries. So once we receive the request, we will hold a meeting by the end of this year. But this request is of paramount importance. We already have Mali that is quite at the avant-garde because they have already sent their request. And then we will answer to this request. And the first thing we will ask the ministry is to have institutionalized somehow this team. And with this national team, we will put in place a work plan. Today we have an idea or estimates of the budget to support each country. So we will tell each country what is the grant or budget that will support them. We know it's not a whole lot of money, but at least it will enable us to get through year number 2. And for each country, you have seen the network of international experts that will be supporting you, and they will be working with you in implementing the activities that you will choose. Regarding mobilizing the expertise, the international expertise, I would rather put expertise alone, because you might have local expertise in the countries that could be brought on board in implementing these activities. I totally agree with you. Remember that what we are doing is transfer of expertise and knowledge. Of course, we will involve local expertise, but what we want is transfer. Digitalization has some countries that are in advance compared to us, and we can't have a network of Pan-African experts or international experts. So, of course, we will involve the national expertise, but today we want to have this roster, a committee of international experts. They might not even have to travel to work with you, as you have seen in the training. They might be working with you from a far distance and support you, give you guidance. So we are not really thinking of having them traveling all the way from Europe or any other Western country to come and help you. Um, Next year, for the countries that we have selected, there will be these 3 activities. We have international experts that are ready and already working on guides or manuals. So we will have a guide on each of the activities, but you will be the ones piloting these guides in somehow. And once we get these handbooks, you are going to use them to implement these activities, and we will take you what are the steps, what are the stakeholders to involve, what are the analysis to carry out. The one who did the training yesterday is working with his colleagues, and it's a draft because, as I said, you will be piloting this phase and we'll work with you on improving it. So you will have a guide for each activity by next year, 1 or 2 international experts who will be here to support you um, from distance, of course. And at the end of the year, this is going to be a strategy that you will have in place. And the following year, let me give you an example. You have the AFDB, and we have 10 targets, 10 objectives. The idea here is to determine where we stand at and where we are reaching for. So we cannot decide on the figures. We can only see through your work where you are at and what you are reaching for. Let me give you a simple example. We need a critical mass of teachers for digital learning, etc. But you are going to be the ones assessing how many teachers you need in the country, how many teachers, master VC teaching, for instance, and you will tell us how many people we need in the 5-10 coming years. So you see that we have targets, but during the evaluation here, in the guide that is going to be developed, for each target or objective that we set, for instance, an objective is to be able to evaluate as we go. In the guide, you will see if we're achieving it, if we're doing it correctly, etc. So we can't stay in Dakar and be determining your targets for you. It will be up to you to tell us based on your environment, based on where you stand at, what you want to achieve, and then you will have your action plan. And during the 3rd year, when we talk of exchange and sharing, it's around each and every topic. So all the enrolled countries on Target 1, for instance, we will have a platform that will be dedicated to Target 1. And everything that you do for target 2 will have a specific platform, and the same goes for the target number 3. At some point, we want to have a generic guide on how to introduce ICT in TVET. We know that something is happening at regional level, but each country will have a guide. So this platform will enable other countries to look for what others are doing. So we might organize days where people exchange about the introduction of ICT, and you can see how other countries are doing it, how other countries are celebrating those days, those national days. And the AFDB told us that they're ready to support the countries that want to put in place excellence centers, and they want strategic documents. I know that the colleague from Benin, with whom we worked 2 years ago and who benefited from the funding of AFBD, knows what I'm talking about. So you need a document that will be evidence of what you're doing. So a sponsor like AFDB is waiting for this strategy to be developed. So once we are done with this, that's where the AFDB will come in based on the requests from the example I gave you, which is the excellence centers to be built in the countries. So in your action plan, you might have activities similar to these excellence centers, and our role will be to facilitate the liaison between you and the AFDB. I know that another country said that in their action plan they want to support countries in implementing ICT in the Tibet programs. So we will do that the same way. And you have that we have objective related to this. So we will support the introduction. AU, for instance, is saying that countries that will celebrate ICT and digitalization will receive our support. And all these were identified during our discussions with the partners, and we will be somehow liaison agents between you and the partners. In the exchange and sharing section, you will have the different targets or objectives. So during the 3rd year, you will see what the countries are doing and capitalize and learn from what has been achieved. So this is how we are planning to implement the initiative. This is something that we have designed in 2020, and we hope that it will go well so that we improve for the next 2 cohorts to come. I hope that is clear. If not, please ask your questions or give your comments.
Okay. Okay. So it means that you are the country that will be selected have to make sure that thing will go well, because at the end of the year we need to have digital. You need to have this done in all the countries that will be selected. So we count on you. Je ne sais pas, est-ce que vous avez aussi des questions d'ordre général?
Do you have general questions, comments? Because my wish is that when you leave this room, you know what the next steps are. I believe that it's up to us, members of the network, to push our authorities, our government institutions to adhere to this digitalization project. We cannot come and impose anything that is dictated to us by UNESCO, but we come rather as a watchdog or a surveillance unit to tell the country to accelerate this digitalization project. And we understand what you said, which is that the ministry should send a request to clearly define what they need from you. And on your side, you will tell them that yes, we agree to support you, but this is what you need to do. I believe that we all understand and agree with that. So we are here to give advice to the authorities so that they buy into the project and make other partners and sponsors also buy into it. Thank you. Speaker's microphone, please.
We are just discussing by email, so it's better to ask questions and so on. Yes.
Voilà, je vais le dire que cette initiative a été.
This initiative has been well described, and we understand what we have at stake. So there will be prior work from us at the level of our respective organizations. And I very much appreciate the support of UNESCO in this endeavor. Now, when we go back to our countries, would we need a sort of letter, correspondence, or any sort of document that would be sent to the administration so that it is evidence of your involvement? I don't mean to say that it's a prerequisite, but could we have something that justifies your involvement or your support? Is my question clear? So what do you mean is, should you receive a recommendation from UNESCO, should we write to you, to our authorities, and give them the highlights about what you are explaining? We will actually work with the governments that will be sending us the requests, saying that they want to introduce digitalization, because we will have to organize workshops, seminars, but it's only after we receive the request that we will be able to support you. For instance, in some countries, when you have contracts with specific divisions, it's very complicated. So we have a colleague, for instance, that is working on supporting countries, and you will be discussing with her in how to implement activities in your countries if you need a contract for such and such activity. But this is going to be after we receive the requests from the ministries by the end of this year, and then you will be notified of our support, and this is how our modus operandi will be. So before all that happens, your country should first and foremost send the request, and then we will come in and tell them that we agree to work with the department or division, but it is going to be with this specific team that we have trained. It's very clear. Thank you. I would like to say that we have recommendation from WHO when they sent the manifest. Our authorities nominated people, and you always have a report after a mission, and after each mission you will have recommendations in the report. And I believe that all of us members of these missions will go back to our countries with the reports and recommendations and how the project will move forward. Thank you.
You've made. But then when we see the request, for instance, it's good to clearly state what the request is. And it can originate from UNESCO. We expect this. If you are interested, then give us that request. Other than that, if it's left in an omnibus manner request, yeah, they'll tell you. Every country will say we are interested. But how interested? If they are not guided by some specific indicators, we want you to meet the requirement. This amount of money should be allotted for this should be this. If it's not clearly defined, they will write an omnibus document to you that we are interested, but it will not be followed by an action. But if the specifics are there, if it's smart for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, or realistic time bound, then that is more or less forcing them to go by it. Other than that, the omnibus letter would come, but nothing happens.
Yes, but what we will send you after this, or like so we have a meeting of partners. So what is certain that I just give you all these elements. We will send you by the end of the month, certainly a letter, an email, not a letter, an email to explain the next step a bit and some details, and give you certainly more orientation. But it was just a formalization of our discussion that will be sent. We just have a meeting with partner to ensure that all is okay, and then you will receive an email as focal point, because for us, the focal point is the reason why all the meeting we say that we need a focal point or the deputy focal point. But for us, officially, the minister who said this is the focal point for the initiative. So for us, we will send to you an email by the end of the month saying, after the other training, the training of the practitioners, you will receive an email saying, okay, this is what we have done during this year. We are preparing to enter in the second year. Second year, we will select this country who can be able to do this. If you are interested, let us know by the end, by an official letter of the minister of this is what we will do after the training of practitioners.
Okay, then understood then.
Ok, donc.
Thank you.
Merci Olivier.
Thank you, Olivier. I believe that it was very clear. It was crystal clear. And as you heard when he was concluding, you will receive an email that will give you the next steps. I have my colleague from the Finance and Administration Office that said that she is yet to receive your invoices for your COVID tests that you took before coming. So your COVID tests that you took before coming. She's also asking if there are mistakes in your COVID tests that you took here. Have you received the corrections made? Very well then. Before we conclude, we're going to give the floor to Olivier. Olivier, are you taking the floor for a few words? Are you changing your hat to talk on behalf of the director of UNESCO? It's quite heavy as a burden. So on behalf of the Regional Office Director, UNESCO Dakar, I would like to thank you for your presence to this workshop. As he usually says, he is looking forward to a prosperous Africa, and it's through this digital transformation that will be competitive, because we are often lagging behind, but we hope that you will be the ambassadors of this advancement, this vision. And we hope that in a year, we will be here again to talk about how we have advanced in this field. And I hope that in 10 years, we will be proud to say that this is what we have achieved. Because What we often do is work on the short term, saying that we have trained 500 people, 10,000 people, workshops, seminars, etc. We talk of activities, but we need to start talking about impacts. And for impacts to happen, we should not target the short term. We should think of 5 years time, 10 years time, etc. Because all countries that were able to develop thought in the long term. So thank you very much for your participation and see you soon. With these words, I declare closed these sessions and this workshop. Thank you very much for your participation. I think lunch is ready.
Tu as vérifié, c'est bon? Donc, le restaurant nous attend, je pense.
So lunch is waiting for us. Thank you.